Today, you've already been manipulated, and you didn't even notice. Someone framed your choices, tugged your emotions, or steered your attention in a direction that benefited them, not you. Maybe it was a coworker who played dumb, so you'd pick up their slack. Maybe it was a friend who overshared just enough to make you feel guilty for saying no. Maybe it was a woman who kept you on the hook with half interest while she chased someone else. You think you're hard to fool, yet look at your life. People you defended who later exposed themselves as frauds. Red flags you explained away. Loyalty you gave to those who were already planning their exit. The worst part isn't that they lied. It's that you helped them by wanting to believe. For centuries, people have pretended humans are basically good, rational, fair. Niccolò Machiavelli was one of the few who refused that fantasy. While others wrote about how people should behave, he wrote about how they actually move when power, fear, and desire are on the line. That's why his ideas survived 500 years. Predators always recognize accurate maps. He wrote, "One who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." Understand what that means. Deceivers exist, always have. You don't vote on that. Your only vote is whether you remain part of the willing crowd, easy to soothe, easy to guilt, easy to use. The naive man takes words at face value and calls it trust. The Machiavellian mind listens to words, but reads hunger, fear, and calculation underneath. This isn't about turning you into a cartoon villain. It's about making manipulation bounce off you. Because before you can read others with that level of clarity, you need the one law of human nature that everything else sits on. Without it, every strategy you learn will collapse the moment real pressure hits you hard. The first law is brutal in its simplicity. Every person you meet is wearing a mask, including you. That's not an insult. It's a survival mechanism. As a child, you learned fast that certain truths got you punished, ignored, or rejected. So you edited yourself. You laughed at jokes that weren't funny, hid anger that wasn't allowed, pretended not to care when you were dying inside. That's where the mask began. Now you see it everywhere. The coworker's smile, the friend's enthusiasm, your partner's reassurance. Any of it might be real. Any of it might be performance. The naive man makes one fatal assumption, that the mask is the person. If they sound kind and loyal, you assume they are. The Machiavellian mind knows better. A mask is a clue, not the truth. Machiavelli wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." Your job is to quietly join that few. Start watching the gap between what people display publicly and how they move when there are no eyes on them. That's dark protocol 1. The wider that gap, the thicker the mask, and the more dangerous it is to take their words as reality. Once you accept that most of your relationships are law 2, is where reading people stops being guesswork and becomes a weapon. The body reveals what the mouth tries to hide. Words are cheap, rehearsed, edited in real time. The body doesn't get that luxury. It reacts before the brain can sanitize. When someone lies or buries a feeling, their nervous system spikes and tiny tensions leak out. A jaw that tightens for half a second, a breath that gets shallow, shoulders that rise, a micro flinch in the eyes, a smile that arrives a beat too late. These signals flash and vanish in milliseconds, but they are always there. Machiavelli watched the courts of Florence and noticed that courtiers were masters of language, but slaves to their bodies. He wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand people believe appearances. Yet their moves still expose them. Picture this. You ask a friend, "Are you mad at me?" They answer, "No, it's fine." But their shoulders lock, their gaze slides away, their lips press thin before the fake smile appears. The sentence says peace, the body whispers war. Dark Protocol 2. Whenever you ask an important question, watch 2 seconds after the answer. Truth flows smoothly, like exhaling. Lies create friction, stiffness, shattered movements. But tension doesn't appear randomly. Something inside them is clashing with their performance, and understanding that clash is next for you. With performances, not people, the hunger appears. You need a way to see behind the mask without tipping your hand. Law 3 exposes the engine under all that tension. Behind every behavior is a fear. When you find the fear, you finally understand the person. People claim they're driven by values and dreams. In reality, they move to avoid humiliation, loss, and pain. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Humans are motivated far more by fear of losing what they have than by gaining something new. The aggressive boss isn't rude, he fears looking weak. The controlling partner isn't intense, they fear abandonment. The overachiever, grinding late nights, isn't chasing glory. They're running from the terror of being ordinary. Most people stare at the surface, obsessing over what someone does. He yelled. She pulled away. They bragged. They lied. The Machiavellian mind asks a sharper question. What are they afraid of right now? Picture a manager who micromanages every line of your work. The naive reading is, they're controlling. The strategic reading is, they're afraid of being blamed if anything goes wrong. Now their behavior stops being mysterious. It becomes predictable. That's Dark Protocol 3. Whenever someone's actions confuse you, ask, what loss are they trying to prevent? Status, money, reputation, love, safety, control, some threatened resource is always there. Machiavelli wrote, men shrink less from offending one who inspires love than one who inspires fear. Fear doesn't drive behavior. It shapes the cracks their mask will split along when pressure hits. The moment fear starts to leak out, it rarely comes out as an honest confession. It comes wrapped in attacks on other people. Law 4. Intense criticism of others is often a disguised confession about oneself. When someone seems obsessed with exposing liars, cheaters, weak men, arrogant women, they are usually at war with that same trait inside their own chest. Machiavelli watched rival factions in Florence and noticed a pattern. Each side accused the other of the exact tactics they themselves were using behind closed doors. Nothing has changed. Look at the guy who won't shut up about how fake and manipulative everyone else is. On the surface, he sounds like a crusader for authenticity. Watch him closely, and you'll usually find the most calculating, two-faced player in the room, constantly testing people, gathering leverage, playing victim when it suits him. He attacks in others what he's terrified of having exposed in himself. That's Dark Protocol 4. Whenever someone repeatedly, emotionally attacks a specific trait in others, don't just nod along. Ask yourself, what if they're hiding this exact thing? Their accusations become inverted confessions, telling you precisely where their shame lives. Criticism betrays hidden traits, but there's another, quieter behavior that reveals even more than what people hate, what they cannot stop chasing again and again in life. The people you should fear most are rarely the ones who look dangerous. They're the ones who look holy. Law 5. Those who advertise their virtue, the loudest usually have the most to hide. Machiavelli lived among priests, politicians, and courtiers who wrapped themselves in purity while trading bribes and betrayals in the dark. He saw the pattern. True virtue doesn't need a marketing campaign. When someone's character is solid, it shows in consistent patterns, not dramatic speeches. This doesn't mean every moral person is secretly corrupt, but excessive, theatrical virtue is a red flag. Think about the coworker who never stops talking about their honesty, integrity, and fairness, who makes sure every room hears how ethical they are. Watch what happens when no one's looking and pressure hits. These are often the first people to cut corners, shift blame, or quietly break their word to protect their image. As Machiavelli put it, the promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Guilty people feel the gap between who they are and who they pretend to be, so they overcompensate with loud declarations. That's dark Protocol 5. Genuine virtue is quiet. Guilty virtue is loud, constantly announced. When someone can't stop telling you how good they are, ask what they're hiding. The people who seem obsessed with proving they're above you are rarely standing on solid ground. Law 6. Those who constantly remind you of their superiority are fighting a war with inferiority. The guy who must dominate every conversation, always be the expert, always correct you, always flash his status, is not secure. He is terrified that if he stops performing for even a moment, you'll see he isn't as special as he pretends. Machiavelli understood that true power is quiet. Princes who controlled their states didn't need to scream about it. Only rulers relied on ceremony, flattery, and noise to feel strong. Look at the person who always drops their achievements into talk, interrupts to prove they know more, dismisses other people's ideas like they're nothing. On the surface, it looks like arrogance. Under a Machiavellian lens, it's naked insecurity dressed up as dominance. That's dark Protocol 6. Real confidence is calm, observant, and doesn't beg for validation. It doesn't need to win every argument or be seen as the smartest in the room, because it isn't afraid of being ordinary in one moment to win bigger later. Loud superiority is different. It's competitive and desperate for proof. Once you recognize that pattern, intimidation fades, and you're ready to study people who deceive on purpose, not out of fear. Once you stop being impressed by loud superiority, you start to notice something more powerful: silence. Law 7. Pay more attention to what people avoid saying than to what they say. Machiavelli moved through courts where every sentence was coated in sugar. So he became a master of reading omissions. In negotiations, political deals, alliances, the most important facts were rarely spoken directly. They lived in what everyone stepped around. A topic someone consistently avoids is a topic that holds power over them. Picture this: you ask about their past relationships. They tell stories about casual flings, disasters, even their divorce. But when one particular ex comes up, answers get short and vague. Then the subject changes. That silence is data. That avoidance maps an unresolved wound, guilt, or obsession. Or take business. A potential partner walks you through vision, branding, mission. But the financials stay blurry, pushed off to be ironed out later. The silence shows you exactly where the risk lives. Dark Protocol 7. After any important conversation, replay it and ask, what didn't they talk about? Which questions got dodged, redirected, or smothered in jokes? That's where the truth hides. Machiavelli wrote, "Never attempt to win by force what can be won by deception." The clever rarely need force. They conceal. Your job is to hear what they thought you'd never notice, but they still hid everything. Once you start hearing silence, the opposite extreme becomes obvious: noise. Law 8. When explanations become too detailed, deception is usually sitting underneath. Truth is simple. It doesn't need decoration. Lies do. A lie has to be constructed, maintained, and protected, so the liar piles on details, excuses, anything to make the fake feel heavy enough to pass as real. Machiavelli noticed that honest men in court gave short accounts. Deceivers spun scenes and motives and coincidences, hoping to drown suspicion in narrative. Watch daily life. You ask a simple question: why were you late? An honest answer sounds like traffic was bad or I overslept. Direct, embarrassing but clean. A suspicious answer sounds like, well, first I had to stop for gas, and then there was an accident on the highway, and my phone died so I couldn't call, and then my boss messaged me. And it feels like clarity, but it's camouflage, a verbal smokescreen. Dark Protocol 8. When a simple question receives a complex answer, slow down and ask yourself what needs this much protection. Don't argue, don't accuse, just note the red flag. Because not all lies sound defensive. Some arrive wrapped in kindness, help, and generosity that feels too good to be true. Law 9 exposes one of the softest traps, generosity that feels almost unreal. Beware the person whose kindness always seems perfectly timed, perfectly visible, perfectly remembered. Machiavelli wrote about rulers who used gifts and favors to bind men more tightly than chains. True generosity expects nothing, but strategic generosity quietly creates debt. Some people don't give from warmth, they give from calculation. Every ride they offer, every introduction they arrange, every bill they insist on paying is an investment, and in their mind, you are the asset. At first, it feels flattering. A new acquaintance is extremely generous, early on buying dinners, offering help, sending you resources, praising you publicly. Then one day they need a big favor, a risky commitment, or your silence about something dirty. And if you hesitate, they open the ledger after everything I've done for you. In that moment, the truth snaps into focus. It was never a gift. It was a contract you didn't know you signed. Dark Protocol 9. When someone is unexpectedly generous, pause and ask, what future situation does this set up for them? If their giving reliably comes with subtle reminders, emotional eyes, or public displays, understand it was never kindness. It was positioning, a quiet attempt to secure leverage over your decisions, and eventually your emotions and reactions. Law 10 exposes the next layer of control. Once someone has your gratitude, they'll often go for your emotions. Some people don't just stumble into drama, they deliberately provoke it to see what you'll reveal. Machiavelli understood that an emotional man is a predictable man, and a predictable man is easy to rule. If someone can reliably make you angry, defensive, jealous, they don't even need leverage yet. Your reactions become the leash around your neck. Skilled manipulators use small, deniable provocations. A backhanded compliment about your appearance, a joke about your competence, a casual comparison to someone better than you, an innocent question that cuts a bit too close. They're not just being rude, they're collecting data. Imagine someone makes an insulting comment about your work in front of others. If you get defensive, they learn you're insecure about your performance. If you snap in anger, they learn you're easy to bait. If you overshare to justify yourself, they gain information they can weaponize. Dark Protocol 10. When someone seems to be poking at you emotionally, pause before you perform for them. Ask, what would this person gain by seeing me upset or exposed right now? Then answer slowly, calmly. As Machiavelli said, The wise man does at once what the fool does. Finally, he chooses his response instead of apologizing for his reaction later. Not during chaos. Law 11 pulls away the excuses you make for people. Judge them by how they treat those with no power. This is one of the most practical filters you will use. Anyone can be charming upward and outward when there is status, sex, or money to gain. The real test is how they behave when there is nothing in it for them. Watch carefully how someone treats servers, assistants, drivers, janitors, and anyone they quietly rank as less than. Here, their strategy goes to sleep and their true nature wakes up because there is no obvious reward or punishment attached. On a date, they might be attentive, generous, funny with you, yet snap at the waiter, roll their eyes at staff, speak like they are invisible. Understand what you are seeing. The kindness to you is strategy. The cruelty to the powerless is truth waiting for its moment. Machiavelli wrote, "Men in general judge more by their eyes than by their hands, for everyone can see, but few can feel." Most people judge by the surface they see. You will judge by the impact they leave on those beneath them. Dark Protocol 11. Before you trust someone with your feelings, your time, or your reputation, observe them around people who cannot benefit them. That's the mind you must plan for. Law 12 is an X-ray for your relationships. A person's reaction to your success exposes how they truly feel about you. Machiavelli warned that envy infects almost every bond between equals, silently rotting loyalty from the inside. The same man who laughs with you and calls you bro may quietly resent every step you climb above him. The filter is simple. Watch what happens when you win. When you share good news, real allies lean in, ask questions, and stay with your moment. Secret enemies flicker. They change the subject, go oddly quiet, or immediately talk about their own achievements. They find tiny shadows in your light. Nice, but that role sounds really stressful. Or congrats, though that field is pretty unstable. Their congratulations arrive delayed, flat, or laced with warnings. Imagine you get promoted. One friend says, "I knew this was coming. You earned it." Another says, "That's great, but are you sure you're ready for all that pressure?" The second friend just exposed their position. Dark Protocol 12. When something good happens to you, study people's first, unedited reactions before they have time to put on the supportive mask. Machiavelli wrote, "Men ought either to be well treated or crushed, because they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries." Envy is the lighter injury people smile through, then repay, rooted in how they learn to measure themselves over time. Law 13 pulls back one more layer. Most adult behaviors are just childhood survival strategies, wearing grown man clothes. Machiavelli watched princes rule entire states with the same fears they had as boys in their father's courts. Nothing mystical, just unprocessed history steering present power. The same is true for everyone around you. The man who can never admit he's wrong often grew up in a home where mistakes brought humiliation or punishment. So now he dodges responsibility like it's lethal. The woman who chases constant approval likely learned that love only came when she performed correctly. The guy who trusts no one probably learned early that secrets were weapons and vulnerability got used against him. Their current personality is old armor. Imagine a partner who becomes irrationally angry when you're late. On the surface, it looks like simple overreaction. Through a Machiavellian lens, you ask a different question. When were they left waiting as a child, watching the door for someone who never arrived? The adult's rage is the child's terror, upgraded with an adult body and vocabulary. Dark Protocol 13. Whenever someone's reaction seems wildly bigger than the situation, don't just label them crazy. Ask, what kind of childhood would make this moment feel dangerous? You're not excusing behavior, you're mapping it, which gives you both predictive power and selective compassion. And beneath these patterns, one axis rules, Control.Law 14, exposes what sits under many difficult personalities. Those who obsess over controlling the outside world are usually losing control on the inside. Machiavelli saw this in rulers who micromanaged every tiny corner of their state, issuing decrees while ignoring the deeper rot underneath. The more frantic their grip, the more insecure they were about losing power. When someone needs to control every plan, every conversation, every outcome, it's rarely competence or high standards. It's an attempt to cage their anxiety. Picture a family member who must script every gathering, the timing, the food, the chart. On the surface you hear, "I'm just organized. I want things to go smoothly." In reality, this might be the only arena where they feel they can force order while the rest of their life spins. Dark Protocol 14. When you encounter excessive control, read it as information, not just irritation. Their rigidity marks where they feel weakest. Machiavelli wrote, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." If you ignore what their control reveals, you don't avoid conflict. You simply give them the advantage. Study what they insist on controlling again and again. There, you'll clearly see what they're most afraid to lose and what they truly value. Law 14 exposes one of the most misunderstood tells of human behavior. The more someone tries to control everything outside them, the less control they have inside. Machiavelli saw this in rulers who micromanaged every coin, every soldier, every whisper in their courts. The more they clutched, the more terrified they were of losing their throne. It's the same with normal people. When someone needs to script every situation, steer every conversation, and predict every outcome, it's not a sign of mastery. It's a sign of unbearable anxiety. Think about the family member who has to orchestrate every holiday down to the minute arrival times. Food, seating, topics, even when people are allowed to leave. You're told they're just organized. In reality, their wider life may feel chaotic, and this ritual is the only battlefield where they can impose order. Dark Protocol 14. When you see excessive control, stop just being annoyed by it and start reading it. It tells you exactly where that person feels weakest and what they fear losing. Machiavelli wrote, "There is no avoiding war. It can only be postponed to the advantage of others." If you ignore what control reveals, you postpone conflict on their terms. See where they tighten their grip, and you'll see what they truly value behind their carefully arranged order. Law 15 cuts through every excuse and performance. Ignore what people say they value and watch where they spend time, money, and energy. After seeing how people cling to control, you need a colder metric, and Machiavelli used the only one that matters: action. Anyone can swear that family comes first, that health is important, that loyalty is everything. Those are cheap slogans. The truth shows up in calendars, bank statements, late-night habits. Do they actually show up for people or just send apologies and emojis? Do they invest in their body or slowly poison it every weekend? Do they pour money into status symbols while forgetting debts and promises? Picture someone who insists relationships are their top priority, yet they cancel plans constantly for work, scroll hours on social media, respond to messages days late, and never initiate contact. Their mouth says relationships. Their resources say distraction and ego. Dark Protocol 15. If you want to know what someone really worships, track their resources for a month, not obsessively, just attentively. The pattern never lies, because resources are limited and spending them hurts. Words are free, resources are expensive. That's why they reveal who someone is, when they think a speech will be enough to hide it forever. Law 16 is the answer to the oldest lie people tell you. I'm not like that. Everyone is like that when the lights are on and reputations are at stake. The real question is who they become when they believe no one will ever find out. Machiavelli knew that public behavior is theater and private behavior is evidence. Courts were full of men who spoke of honor in the council chamber, then broke every promise the moment it clashed with their interests. He wrote, "A wise ruler ought never to keep faith, when by doing so it would be against his interests." Most people are not that honest about their dishonesty. They will swear loyalty, integrity, compassion, but watch what happens in the unobserved corners of their life. Notice how they treat their belongings when they think no one sees, how they speak about friends when those friends are absent, how they act when there is no social reward for kindness. These are not small details, they are windows. Dark Protocol 16. Pay ruthless attention to unguarded moments, the quick comment they assume you didn't hear, the way their face changes when someone leaves the room, the decision they make when there is zero benefit to doing the right thing. That is the version you must plan for, trust, or avoid. After you start catching unguarded moments, there's one upgrade. Stop being impressed by events and start worshiping patterns. Law 17. Single actions can deceive, but patterns over time cannot. Machiavelli warned rulers not to trust one brave act from a coward or one generous act from a miser. Anyone can behave well once. Anyone can hide their rot for a season, especially when there's something to gain. But human nature is lazy. Over months and years, people default to who they are. That's why patience is a weapon. Manipulators rely on your hunger to decide quickly, to crown them loyal, safe, different, after a few intense conversations and one favor. The Machiavellian mind withholds final judgment. Picture a new friend who seems supportive at first. He says the right things, shows up for one emergency, talks about loyalty like it's a religion. Then 6 months pass, and you notice he breaks small promises, forgets commitments, disappears when it's inconvenient, and only shows up fully when there's attention involved. Moments said solid, the pattern screams unreliable. Dark Protocol 17. Treat every interaction as a data point, not a verdict. Keep mental notes and let time do the interrogation for you. Patterns expose what words, apologies, and isolated acts work hard to hide, bringing you to the final truth about reading others. If you stop this at "I can finally read people," you've missed the sharpest blade in everything you've just learned. Every law in this video cuts both ways, straight through you. You wear masks. You project. You perform. You hide wounds under jokes, arrogance, detachment, fake indifference. The same fears, the same childhood strategies, the same craving for control and validation you see in others are operating in you, whether you admit it or not. Machiavelli's deepest wisdom was never just about manipulating courts. It was about stripping away comforting illusions. The person who truly reads others has first had the courage to read himself without flattery. Law 18 is the Machiavellian mirror. You ask, where do I wear masks to stay liked, safe, or admired? What traits do I attack in others that I secretly wrestle within myself? What childhood wounds keep scripting my adult reactions? When do I advertise my virtue the loudest because I feel the guiltiest and weakest inside? This isn't about becoming cynical or paranoid. It's about becoming awake. Awareness of others is protection. Awareness of yourself is power. Combined, they become freedom, the ability to choose your reactions instead of being run by old programming. Dark Protocol 18. Run every law you've heard through your own life before you weaponize it on anyone else. See your own patterns clearly enough that you don't need to judge, posture, or punish. Machiavelli wrote, "He who wishes to be obeyed must know how to command." You cannot command your world until you command yourself, and that is where application begins. Otherwise, this knowledge will own you. Knowledge you don't test in the real world rots into fantasy. So here is your 7-day Machiavellian protocol, designed to turn everything you've heard into a permanent upgrade in you, not a passing insight. Days 1 and 2, the Mask Watch. Choose one person in your life, co-worker, friend, partner, and quietly track the gap between their public and private behavior. How do they act in groups versus one-on-one, online versus offline? Note every inconsistency, every shift in tone, every time the mask slips. Days 3 and 4, the fear hunt. In every interaction, ask yourself, what is this person trying not to lose? Status, control, approval, comfort, advantage. Write down your guesses after conversations. Refine them as patterns appear. Days 5 and 6, the silent study. Now focus less on what people say and more on what they avoid. Which topics get dodged, laughed off, redirected? Which questions never get answered directly? Those silences mark power. Day 7, the mirror day. Turn every law inward. Where do you wear masks? Project, over-explain, seek control, perform virtue, or pretend indifference? What fears and childhood patterns still script your reactions? The promise is simple. Do this for 7 days with ruthless honesty, and you will not see people the same way again. Not as better or worse, just clearer, and that clarity will shield you from manipulation while allowing deeper, chosen connection. Most will nod and scroll away, staying weak. The few who run this protocol become the man others can no longer play. But you are no longer the man who takes people at face value and prays it works out. You now see beneath surfaces. You watch masks, tensions, silences, and patterns the way others scroll feeds. This is the beginning of the Machiavellian mind. You are strategic, not paranoid. You understand that seeing reality clearly is not negativity, it is survival. You are observant, not judgmental. You collect information instead of throwing labels. You are protective, not cruel. You use what you know to guard your time, your loyalty. You are patient, not reactive. You let people reveal themselves instead of forcing outcomes. You are self-aware, not self-blind. You study your own masks before tearing off anyone else's. And understand what you are not. You are not a manipulator hunting victims, not a cynic who believes everyone is trash, not an exploiter using psychology as a weapon against the weak. Machiavelli isn't remembered because he glorified cruelty, but because he described human nature honestly when others were still pretending. From now on, you notice what others miss. Welcome to clarity. Now, it's your move. Don't just let this sit in your mind like another video you remember next week. Drop a comment with which of the 18 laws hit you the hardest and why. Put it in your own words. That's how you wire it into your system. If you've ever been fooled, betrayed, or played, you ignored the signs. Type ISEENOW in the comments so you never forget this line in the sand. Then choose your step. Which law are you going to practice during the 7-day protocol? Call it out below and commit to it. If this opened your eyes, subscribe and turn on notifications, because next video goes deeper into strategic psychology, emotional control, and power. Remember, your awareness is your armor, your observation is your weapon, your patience is your power. In a world of masks, the one who sees clearly is the one who cannot be fooled. You see clearly now. Act accordingly. Where the willingness is great, the difficulties cannot be great. Drop a comment with the law number that hit you the hardest and why in your words. Type ISEENOW if you've ever been fooled and wish you'd known these laws earlier. Comment which law you're going to practice first in the 7-day challenge. Tell me, who is the first person that came to mind while you were watching this? And if you're ready to see what others can't, drop MACHIAVLAAENMIND in the comments.